Welcome to Torah is for Everyone. Tonight we have a double parasha, Tazria, Metzora. It was a really tough one when I started to do it, but it started to get clear as I continued researching it. But the first thing I want to do is wish everybody a happy Yom Ha'atzmaut. It's Israel's Independence Day. We're going to walk around with our flags waving. I should have taken my flag and started waving it. Thank God for Israel becoming a nation, but it still is not the nation that God wants it to be. And we are not the people that God wants us to be. That's why it's so important for us to read the Torah and to get to understand exactly what He wants. So without further ado, I am going to share the screen. And those who would like to read, I really appreciate the help in reading, because especially this is a long one. So here we're starting with Tazria, and the second one will go in 14 or 15, we'll go to Metzora.
I'll read a touch. So
Okay.
Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus. When a woman at childbirth bears a male, she shall be impure 7 days. She shall be impure as at the time of her condition of menstrual separation. On the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. She shall remain in a state of blood purification for 33 lift the screen days. Thank you. Days. She shall not touch any consecrated thing, nor enter the sanctuary until her period of purification is completed. If she bears a female, she shall be impure 2 weeks as during her menstruation, and she shall remain in a state of pure purification 66 days. For 66 days. On the completion of her period of purification for either son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a lamb in his first year for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering.
Okay, before we continue, let me just say a few things. So we noticed that for 7 days, here, let's go back, after she has a male child, actually, is it a male or female? Yeah, this is for a male child. She's impure. Now, the word for impure is tameh. There's 2 words that we're going to be looking at here, tahor and tameh. Now, these have been translated as pure and impure or clean and unclean. But actually, the sense of it, because remember, we're not taking things literal. We have to look at what is God trying to tell us in these pictures. So we're going to see that for 7 days, she wasn't allowed to go out. And then on the 8th day, she had to be ready to go to the temple, to go to the Kohen, to go to the Mishkan for the circumcision of her son, because it didn't say a female, it said a male. So on the 8th day, she had to be presentable, which is what tahor means. Presentable or ready to approach God, clean enough to go to the Kohen. It had nothing to do with unclean. And then then it talks about 33 days for the female and 33 days for the male child. Here, let's go continue here. It says
interruption.
Yes.
Interruption. She had to go to the moil, I think, whatever that means.
Well, in those days, they didn't have the moil. They had the Kohen, the priest. It didn't say a moil. But that's in the modern day, because we don't have the Mishkan, we don't have the priesthood the way it was. It was this is where it was done and how it was done. Okay. According to the Torah. So it says here, for 33 days, if it was a male, she couldn't touch anything. She couldn't go near the sanctuary. And then if it's a female, she was impure 2 weeks. and then remain in that state where she couldn't go for 66 days. And simply speaking, it all had to do with the understanding of the meaning of the blood. Okay. The boy, when he was circumcised on the 8th day, there would be a little bit of a shedding of blood. But for the female, it would be for her whole life, the whole life of the time during her menstruation. This is about life and death, the whole thing. You see, we're going to continue. I'm hoping that it comes a little bit clearer as we continue on.
He shall offer it before Hashem and make expiation on her behalf. She shall then be pure from her flow of blood. Such are the rituals concerning her who bears a child, male or female. If, however, her means do not suffice for a sheep, she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. The priest shall make expiation on her behalf, and she shall be pure.
In other words, she brings an offering, which is a korban chatat. Why is chatat is translated as a sin offering, but it really has nothing to do with sin. If you take a look at what a female goes through when she's having her menstrual cycle or after she gives birth, her hormones are out of whack. She's out of balance. She needs to be restored. And some of our sages say that going through a difficult process makes us feel very weak. Sometimes leaves us with a vacuum inside that needs to be filled. Until that vacuum is filled, we feel lost, we feel out of control. It's like an emptiness that the soul needs to be restored. Like when we're ill, we're tired. There's a spiritual vacuum in our physical body. Now, the lack of balance between our neshama and our body can cause us to lose our joy of life, can cause us to become depressed. We lose focus. That's why some women even go through postpartum depression. The spiritual aspect of our body, our neshama, needs to be healed before we can have physical healing. And this is what these things are pointing to. Okay, let's continue. Continue, Jerry.
Spoke to Aras, saying, when a person has on the skin of the body a swelling, a rash, or a discoloration, and it develops into a scaly affection on the skin of the body, it shall be reported to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests. The priest shall examine the affection on the skin of the body. If hair in the affected patch has turned white, and the affection appears to be deeper than the skin of the body, it is a leprous affection. When the priest sees it, he shall pronounce the person impure.
Okay,
But
before you continue, let me just, one of the things, again, that our rabbi taught us was that about the words pure and impure, clean and unclean. Simply speaking, tahor represents life. Tameh, or as translated unclean, represents death. Our God is the God of the living. When we approach him, we need to be presentable. Like before you go to a wedding, you shower, you dress well, you make yourself look great. We need to be presentable before God. So here in this case, it's talking about tzara'at. It's a skin disease of some kind. Why wouldn't they go to the doctor? Why a Cohen? Why the priest? Any idea?
maybe he was the doctor at the same time.
Maybe, but it shows us that it's a spiritual matter.
Spiritual, that's right.
Exactly. It's not a physical one. And today, neuropsychology teaches that most, if not all, diseases of the physical body are related to the spiritual, or as some prefer to call it, the emotional aspects of our life. We can't separate the physical from the spiritual. Many of us get sick when our spiritual nature is low, and we only realize it when the symptoms start to show in a variety of illnesses in our physical body. Now, as you know, I was sick. I was suffering from the end of October until recently with this problem in my mouth. Last week was the worst. And I had sought help from everyone, from doctors, naturopaths, homeopathy, tried every remedy available. And it just kept getting worse. And I kept constantly praying and begging God for help. Finally, the problem was solved, and I saw that it was a problem at the soul level. I had to deal with certain issues that are personal, and when I was dealing with them, they were gone. I started again to have these same negative thoughts, the same negative experience, and it started to come back. It was both spiritual and it hit me at the physical level, at the spiritual level. No, it hit the spiritual, hit the physical. And we have to remember that God is teaching us something here. When we're attacked by something physical, we have to go to the spiritual. We have to go to the emotional and check that out too. Not only run to doctors, sometimes we have to go to God and see. And according to Hebrew thought, each person has a dual aspect, physical and spiritual. We're made up of the neshama, or the soul, the ruach, and the guf, the physical, the basar, the flesh. And the Torah is teaching us that the body, the guf, is under the supervision of the spiritual, the neshama. To the Hebrew mind, both body and spirit are one unit. This is where the presence of God, the Shekhinah, is encountered. However, today most people have accepted the Greek understand that where they separate body, mind, and spirit, the trilogy that separates one from the other, in which the physical body dominates the spirit. There is a level of the soul or the neshama that we cannot comprehend in these three-dimensional bodies. We're going to continue to read, but keep in mind what this teaching is all about as we read, because it's more about the spiritual here than the physical. Okay, continue, Jerry.
But if it is a white discoloration on the skin of the body, which does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and the hair in it does not turn white, the priest shall isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall conduct an examination. And if the affection has remained unchanged in color, and the disease has not spread on the skin, the priest shall isolate that person for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall again conduct an examination. If the affection has faded and has not spread on the skin, the priest shall pronounce the person pure. It is a rash. After washing those clothes, that person shall be pure. But if the rash should spread on the skin after the person has been seen by the priest and pronounced pure, that person shall again report to the priest. And if the priest sees that the rash has spread on the skin, the priest shall pronounce that person impure. It is leprosy.
Let me just interject here for a moment. The word sara'at is not the same idea as Hansen's disease that we know today, the leprous condition. And we know, even though the Torah doesn't speak directly about the tongue, the evil tongue, the Lashon Hara, we know that Miriam, the sister of Moses, was afflicted with this sara'at. And do you remember when? Remember when that happened? She was gossiping to Aaron about Moses. And gossip is a trap that is so easily to fall into. There's a difference between speaking with someone to get their opinion, because we truly want the best for the other person, and speaking with another person in a way that destroys their character. We're all made in God's image, and when we gossip, we are debasing the image of God. And there are spiritual consequences for this. Many of us get sick because we're gossiping, and that's part of the search of the leaven that we have to search within us at Pesach, which we just passed. Instead of spending so much time cleaning our houses of yeast and taking out our second set of dishes, and some to the point even to have a second kitchen or a second home, let us remember that we need to spend time searching for the chametz, the leaven, the yeast, the dirt within our own hearts. God wants a humble and contrite spirit. That this disease, tzara'at, affected people, and we're going to see soon as we continue to read, it's affecting clothing and even the walls of the house.
When a person has a scaly affection, it shall be reported to the priest. If the priest finds on the skin a white swelling, which has turned some hair white, with a patch of undiscolored flesh in the swelling, it is chronic leprosy on the skin of the body, and the priest shall pronounce the person impure. Being impure, that person need not be isolated. If the eruption spreads out over the skin so that it covers all the skin of the affected person from head to foot, wherever the priest can see, if the priest sees that the eruption has covered the whole body, he shall pronounce as pure the affected person, who is pure from having turned all white. But as soon as undiscolored flesh appears in it, that person shall be impure. When the priest sees the undiscolored flesh, he shall pronounce the person impure. The undiscolored flesh is impure. It is leprosy. I think they went for an MD degree, you know?
Maybe it is tzara'at. I
But
wish
you
they-
know what's interesting? I think you may have
Yeah.
said this before too,
yeah,
but we haven't read anywhere of actual doctors in the Torah. Like, where do you read about going to a doctor or a healer? Like, it's always tied to the spiritual, like the
Yes.
priests. Like, that's amazing when you think of it. There were no
Exactly.
doctors, I don't think. Or it doesn't talk about it.
No, it doesn't. We don't hear about that. There may have been healers at the time, that have maybe they understood about using different herbs. You know, we didn't have the drug associations like we have today. So there may have been that, but
Don't
definitely,
even have, well, you know, in other cultures, you had the witch doctor or the healer or whatever.
right. So they understood that. I know at the time of Yeshua, remember there were people who were healers. Remember, Yeshua himself, we read about Elisha and Elijah healing, even bringing back from the dead. So this was done always through the spiritual. Remember, with Yeshua, there was a person who was blind, and they all said, "Why is this?" They asked him, "Why is this person blind? Did he sin, or did his parents sin?" They understand that it had to do with sin, and Yeshua said in this particular case, it had to do with glorifying God. Remember that, Miriam?
Yeah, well,
It was all
yeah,
for the
but I
glory, so that
remember,
the glory of
okay,
God
but
would be revealed.
uh,
It was so that the glory of God could be revealed.
right, yeah,
He
that I
healed him.
remember. But also remember when people were saying such and such happened or because of their sin, and
Right.
Yeshua said, um, you know, be careful lest worse happen to you. In other words, don't blame other people or anyway, it always had a spiritual component though.
Right, exactly.
You
And
don't go to a doctor now. Or, well, some doctors will say, they'll bring that in, but generally it's the body is separate in
yeah,
medicine.
well, we separate the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, and they're so interconnected. It's like this body without the spirit doesn't have life. The Spirit is what gives us life, and God breathed His Spirit into us. And when we are so separated from our spiritual connection with God, we can suffer with things like depression, anxiety, our immune systems are weakened. There are verses in the scriptures that we've read that where God said, if like the one, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, I will heal their land. And He always is looking. He says, I will keep, if you obey my commandments, all the illnesses that were placed upon the Egyptians, I will not put on you. He will make us well. He's always constantly talking about, we're so connected with Him that we don't even remember that. We don't know that. And all this had to do with, this is what this is talking about. Okay, continue, Jerry.
And the priest shall conduct an examination. If the affection has turned white, the priest shall pronounce as pure the affected person who is then pure. When an inflammation appears on the skin of one's body and it heals, and a white swelling or a white discoloration streaked with red develops where the inflammation was, that person shall report to the priest. If the priest finds that it appears lower than the rest of the skin, and that the hair in it has turned white, the priest shall pronounce the person impure. It is a leprous affection that has broken out in the inflammation. But if the priest finds that there is no white hair in it, and it is not lower than the rest of the skin, and it is faded, the priest shall isolate that person for 7 days. If it should spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce the person impure. It is an affection. But if the discoloration remains stationary, not having spread, it is the scar of the inflammation. The priest shall pronounce that person impure. When the skin of one's body contains a burn by fire, and the patch from the burn is a discoloration, either white streaked with red or white, the priest shall examine it. If some hair has turned white in the discoloration, which itself appears to go deeper than the skin, it is leprosy that has broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce the person impure. It is a leprous affection. But if the priest finds that there is no white hair in the discoloration, and that it is not lower than the rest of the skin, and it is faded, the priest shall isolate that person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall conduct an examination if it has spread in the skin. The priest shall pronounce the person impure. It is a leprous affection.
Remember when Naaman, the Syrian officer, came down with Tzaraat, and he was in Syria, and he had a little an Israelite servant who was living in the household. And the servant told the Syrian officer, Naaman, to go to Israel because there would be a cure for him. And it was at the time of, I think it was Elisha. And he went, he didn't want to go because he says, why would I go to those people? But she convinced him to go. And he went to Elisha, and Elisha didn't even open the door. He just said to him, go and dip. Here, you see, 7th day, constantly repeated, 7 days, 7 days. He was told to dip 7 times in the Jordan. And the Syrian officer, it was a general, he was so upset. Don't we have greater rivers in Syria? this guy, why doesn't he come out and make a whole thing here? Put your hands over me and just declare me clean, like make a whole big, but God is showing us that it's always the pride and humility. We're going to see that in several areas coming up. He finally went into the Jordan. He finally agreed. He went into the Jordan and he had to dip 7 times. And each time he would come up, he'd have to go down again and up and down again until finally he was healed and he came up like a new person. This really has to do with trust, with an understanding that there is no greater God than our God. I don't know if you can see the connection here.
Yeah. Always about pride.
Always about pride. I know. And
But if the discoloration has remained stationary, not having spread on the skin, and it is faded, it is the swelling from the burn. The priest shall pronounce that person pure, for it is the scar of the burn. If a man or a woman has an affection on the head or in the beard, the priest shall examine the affection. If it appears to go deeper than the skin, and there is thin yellow hair in it, the priest shall pronounce the person impure. It is a scaly eruption in the hair or beard. But if the priest finds that the scale affection does not appear to go deeper than the skin, yet there is no black hair in it, the priest shall isolate the person with the scale affection for 7 days. On the 7th day, the person shall examine the affection. If the scale has not spread and no yellow hair has appeared in it, and the scale does not appear to go deeper than the skin, the person with the scale shall shave. But without shaving the scale, the priest shall isolate the person for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine the scale. If the scale has not spread on the skin and does not appear to go deeper than the skin, the priest shall pronounce the person pure. After washing those clothes, that person shall be pure. If, however, the scale should spread on the skin after the person has been pronounced pure, the priest shall conduct an examination. If the scale has spread on the skin, the priest need not look for yellow hair. The person is impure. But if the scale has remained unchanged in color and black hair has grown in it, the scale is healed. The person is pure. The priest shall pronounce that person pure. If a man or a woman has the skin of the body streaked with white discoloration, and the priest sees that the discoloration on the skin of the body are of a dull white, it is a tether broken out on the skin. That person is pure. If a man loses the hair of his head and becomes bald, he is pure. If he loses the hair on the front part of his head and becomes bald at the forehead, he is pure. But if a white affection streak with red appears on the bald spot in the front or at the back of the head, it is a scaly eruption that is spreading over the bald part in the front or at the back of the head. The priest shall examine him. If the swollen affection on the bald part in the front or at the back of the head is white, streaked with red, like the leprosy of a body skin in the appearance, he is a leprous man. He is impure. The priest shall pronounce him impure. he has the affection on his head. As for the person with a leprous affection, the clothes shall be rent, the head shall be left bare, and the upper lip shall be covered over, and that person shall call out, impure, impure. The priest shall be impure, the person shall be impure as long as the disease is present. Being impure, that person shall dwell apart in a dwelling outside the camp. When an eruptive affection occurs in a cloth of wool or linen fabric, in the wrap, or in the wool of the linen or the wool, or in a skin or in anything made of skin, if the affection in the cloth or the skin, in the wrap,
No, it's the warp or the woof. It's the type of
right,
weaving.
the warp of the wolf, or in any article of skin, is streaky green or red, it is an eruptive affection. It shall be shown to the priest. I wonder if anyone's going to make a flow chart with this, Peggy.
What?
I think it classically, when I've heard about leprosy, people, well, you remember outbreaks even in India in the last centuries, people were lost their limbs and
Yeah, you have to make a flow chart with photos.
no, but I wonder, this doesn't seem to be the same thing.
It's not. This is not.
They
That's
don't.
why
They don't. They,
when
they,
we
That's what
read
you said
leprosy,
before.
when we read leprosy, it is not Hansen's disease. It's not the modern day leprosy. These are different types of infections.
So when they had, even in Yeshua's time, remember they had colonies of lepers? They
Yes.
were separate. They weren't like the modern day without, didn't they miss limbs and, no?
I
They-
don't think this is the same thing.
Okay.
so Miriam, are we taking notes, Miriam?
Well, I know it all anyway, so.
You know it by heart.
So you
So,
could
so modern day leprosy is called Hansen's, but it's not
Hansen's disease.
Hansen's and it's not this.
Yeah, and there's a medication for it. There was no medication for this because it was spiritual.
Okay, so I've just, so in, yeah, you said that before. So in
Yeah.
Yeshua's time, when they had those communities, they weren't
Uh,
missing limbs like the disease today? I don't
Yeah.
remember reading.
Yeah, according to my understanding and what I've heard from our rabbi, this is not the same thing. That's why instead of saying leprosy, we should say sara'at. Let's see how many verses, because now it's going into the cloth. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, well, I just want to put out that until about 75 or 80 years ago, on the Hawaiian island of Molokai, there was that was still a leper colony.
Right.
So I mean, it's not like we're better necessarily than our ancestors. Or I mean, change that. It's not like we're different necessarily from our ancestors. I just want to put that out.
Yeah. But again, the leprosy that was on that in that colony is not the disease that this is talking about. The word came from the Septuagint. When the Septuagint, the rabbis translated the Torah into Greek, they used a Greek word that sounded like leprosy, and that's how tsa'at became leprosy, but it's not the same as the Hansen's disease. So here we're going to see first we're reading about how the person was infected. Now the clothing are infected. And we're going to continue. We're not going to read the whole thing. Now we're going to go to chapter 14, where we'll see the ritual for the person, the tzara'a, the Metzora, was the person who had tza'arat at the time of being purified. When it was reported to the priest, The priest shall go outside the camp. If the Kohen sees that the person with the Metzora had been healed of the infection, the Kohen had to take 2 live pure birds, cedar wood, crimson material, and hyssop to be brought for the one to be purified. And again, these things represent, remember, Hebrew is a language of pictures. Let's not get stuck on, because God is trying to give us a message. He's taking 2 pure birds, those that were able to be accepted as an offering. They were living, so they had blood. Cedar wood represented the tallest and the strongest of trees. They were brought to build the temple. Cedar wood represents the pride of man. Crimson was a color that was derived from a certain type of either a worm or a snail, and it represented humility. Hyssop was in total opposition to the cedar. The hyssop was the smallest of bushes, and it was used to make a broom, the lowliest of jobs. It didn't build big temples. It swept the floor to be brought for the one to be purified. In other words, God is saying, in order to be purified, you have to take the pride out of you and become humbled. And then we're going to read over and over again. The Kohen shall order the bird to be slaughtered over the water, and take the live bird along with the cedar wood. You know, these rituals almost sound pagan. You have to sprinkle it 7 times to the one who is to be purified of the eruption, effective purification, and then set the live bird free in the open country. And then the second one was going to be taken and offered. The one to be purified shall shave all their clothes, shave off all their hair. You know, how can cedar wood, hyssop, scarlet, 2 birds, living water work together to clean a person? Later, we're going to read about how it's going to cleanse the house. It's going to cleanse the clothes. How can these work? These things be used for that? It sounds like a voodoo ritual. Remember, God had brought the Jews, the Hebrews, out of Egypt, where they were so used to these type of rituals, and God was taking these things and redirecting them toward Him. It's like our Rabbi constantly used to emphasize to us that Hebrew is not like our Western way of thinking. It's like a mosaic where we need to step back to see the bigger picture. And our challenge is finding the principles from those rituals and applying them for today. Why do you think that God created these elaborate rituals? Any idea? What do you think?
I think maybe we need to see something that's different from our everyday of thinking. Sometimes it helps us to see the picture of the reality of something bigger than us, God, a creator. Rituals also always, even in our own lives, in birthdays or whatever, simple rituals. It's a way of bringing focus on something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
The love of a child, the love of, and you know, it was separating a people for a purpose, and they were just being introduced to the fact that there's a creator of the whole universe or whatever.
And remember the character of the people of Egypt. Even if you go to the Orient today, even among our own people, we see so much superstition. And superstition comes from paganism, comes from those religions where they rely on artifacts, symbols, things like when I was a kid, somebody gave me, I'm sorry, Miriam, but somebody gave me a rabbit's foot.
I know.
And the rabbit's foot was considered to be lucky. If you held it in your pocket, you'd be lucky. If you hung up a horseshoe in your home, you would be lucky. We had all these symbols, and God was trying to take people away. So it was almost like this was hocus pocus. He was creating these elaborate rituals that people were, wow, look at this. I can be made pure if I do this. It's a little bit like later on where we're going to read. Remember the story of the Sotah, where the husband became jealous of his wife? And he took her to the priest who concocted this potion for her to drink from the ashes of the altar and mixed these certain things together. And she would have to drink it. If she was guilty, her belly would swell up, her thighs would increase, she wouldn't be able to get pregnant, and they would know she was guilty. But if she was innocent, nothing would happen. So imagine if this wife was guilty, she wouldn't want to drink that potion because she knew. So there's no, we have to look at this from the understanding that these people were bringing us away from the superstitions of paganism of Egypt. There's no room for superstition in the lives of those who trust God. It's mind control. But so many people are so stymied by their superstition that they can't experience freedom, the freedom that God offers us in our lives. And we need to constantly check our belief systems and free ourselves from these things that become burdensome. I'm constantly getting calls. Am I allowed to do this? Can I do that? You know, we have to use sechel, common sense. You know, people will walk into their house and forget to kiss the mezuzah, and they go out and they have to come back in again. They have to kiss the mezuzah as if bad luck is going to happen to them if they don't. How many superstitions are we caught up in today? And God is always giving us a way to choose life instead of death. Tahor is life, Tameh is death. Let me
And
continue.
just one thing that I
Yes.
just want to clarify. When you said let's that the Greek translation of
Of
what
Sara'at.
Sa'arat, which they translated it to be leprosy as not a spiritual well, as an actual physical thing, but in what Sa'arat, I forget how do we translate it properly? I forget what you said.
Tazria and Sara'at are, hang on a second, I had written this at the beginning. Where did I put it? Well, Tazria was the woman at childbirth, comes from the word seed, where the seed, she brings forth a seed, and Tzara'at comes from the same idea. Hang on a second, where is it?
So it's not it was translated as leprosy, but it's not actually
No.
an illness.
No, it's not an illness. It's an how do we translate Tza'at? You know what? I don't know if I can't
Well,
remember.
when they say tameh and tahor, clean and unclean, is that related to sa'arat?
Well, it has to do with more the physical condition of the person being presentable to God or not. It really isn't the physical thing is not the illness. It's the result of not being clean before God.
Right.
It's a result of having done something sinful, something that makes us unapproachable to God. That's more the idea. The word
So
sa'arat,
they took that word sa'arat or sa'arat
yeah,
and translated it into leprosy, like a disease.
exactly. And it doesn't, it takes us away from the true meaning of the word. You know, when like we're gonna see how it hit the walls. Now, if you're living in a house where um, negativity affects our psyches, like in the home. If a woman, if a wife is unhappy and negative, and she's always she's neglecting the house. I remember Rabbi talked about this. She had an unhappy state of mind. She neglected it so badly that the walls grew mold in the house. You know, the physical, her negative emotions and her negative spirit led her to not take care of her home, not keep things clean, allow a mold to grow. It's like it spread throughout the whole household. It would be the same with our clothes. If you're so negative, you don't even you don't want to take care of yourself. You don't even wash your clothes. It's all interrelated. You know, women, we people don't realize how our negative nature, our negative feelings and understandings um, affect our physical, our clothes, our home, our
But
our
mold, for example, I know what you're saying, the principle, but mold could come into anybody's home. It's not only how you treat it, it could be even bigger than the individual. Like the mold could be um could be the condition of the neighborhood even, or of a kind. I'm getting dramatic, but I'm
but
saying
it's
it's
true.
not always an individual, because things like mold don't necessarily have to do with cleanliness. You could have a mold in your house and you could clean until your knuckles are red, but it will still go away. It
That's
won't go
true.
away.
That's true. But I believe that a lot of this is spiritual, and this
Yeah, but I'm saying that could even
yeah,
be because the world is in a state like sometimes the consequences of other people's actions affect us. And even in a thing like that, if you're in a neighborhood where whatever is a neighborhood where things aren't taken care of, where there's a lot of evil, a lot of this, I'm just saying it's almost global, because you
it's
see things
true.
happening in the world now
Yes.
that are beyond the individual. You know, the way the world is going, that there's a lot of horrible things happening.
Exactly. And these, you know, these things, it's so difficult to explain, because it's like, you know, when they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, Hebrew gives us pictures, and we have to try to find a way to take the spiritual and explain it in a way that we can understand with our three-dimensional minds. It's so difficult. If we go to like this is going to continue to talk about what the priest is doing. Okay, the Kohen is doing. Let's go to chapter 15. I want to continue here because this will. Where do we find it here? Because this is the plague in the house. It goes from see, that whoever sleeps in the house must wash their clothes and purge the house. He must take 2 birds, cedar wood, crimson, and hyssop. How do you purge the bird? Purge the house with 2 birds, cedar wood, and crimson and hyssop. It's spiritual.
Yeah, but like what
And they
you
had to
said,
sprinkle the house 7 times. How is that going to do that? Do you
I
understand?
guess like when you know, because what you said before, if there's evil in the household, or if there's discontent, or if whatever, you have the wife who's negative, or the husband whatever's going on in the
Right,
house,
right.
and it manifests as more, whatever happens at some point. I think people realize when it forces you sometimes to turn back to God, or to say what's going
Exactly.
on.
Exactly. You see
Uh,
here, he set the live bird free outside the city into the open country. These rituals were elaborate for the people to say, hey, what's going on here? Maybe we need to search. And here's chapter 15. Speak to the children of Israel. When any man who has a discharge issuing from his member, he is impure. The impurity from his discharge shall mean the following: whether his member runs with a discharge or is stopped up so that there's no discharge. You know, the idea, again, we have the idea of tahor and tameh, life and death. The verses speak of bodily emissions. These emissions, like with the male, the semen, contain life. They contain the ability to give life. Once it's released from the body, it represents death. It's tameh. Every month, the woman ovulates. She forms an egg within her. If the egg is not impregnated, it's discharged out of the body by the blood in their menstrual charge and menstrual cycle. So what could bring life now represents bringing death as it leaves her body. That's what they understood as contamination. So that happens with both the male and the female. And God is showing us that He has given us life and that we are to live it by doing what is right. And we have to look at what things destroy us instead of giving life. It's just going to continue to go through what they have to do when these discharges, male and female, are released from the body, what they have to do. Again, the rituals. On the 8th day, he takes 2 turtle doves, 2 pigeons, and comes before God at the entrance of the meeting and gives them to the Kohen. The priest shall offer them, the one as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement or expiation or covering on his behalf. When a man has an emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water and remain impure until evening. Likewise for a woman, when a man has carnal relationship with her, and both bathe in water and remain impure until evening. You know, these things we can't apply this to our day. We don't have the Mishkan. We don't have the temple. There is no priest to take all this. So we have to look at, what do we do? Here, if a man lies with a woman, her menstrual separation applies to him. He shall be impure 7 days, and any bedding on which he lies shall become impure. The whole idea of the woman discharging the ovule the blood during her menstruation, there's also all these hormonal issues that she's going through at that time of menstruation. In paganism, they believed that during the time when she was bleeding, that they believed then that was when it was more exciting for the men, because the blood was always used as a pagan ritual. And so her blood made them want to lie with her even more. But here God was saying He understood the nature of the woman. He understood that during that time of menstruation, her hormones were raging. Her moods were changing. She needed a time of separation. She needed to be left alone. And the only way you can deal with a mind of a superstitious mind is by saying, you know what? If you touch a woman when she's bleeding, you're going to become unclean and you won't be able to come to the temple. They wanted to go to the temple. They were called to go to the temple or the Mishkan. And so this way, he understood at that time that he needed to be separated from her. He needed to leave her alone during that period of time. And after she had a baby, it was even more so, for not only the 33 days for the male, but the 66 days for the female, to give her time to heal, to give her time to recover, so that she could have time with the baby alone and not have to worry about always, the man coming at her when she's feeling these horrible hormonal changes in her being. To me, this is a God of compassion, of really understanding the nature of the woman, understanding the superstitious nature of mankind. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, just yeah, I do. God, it shows God's graciousness. But the 33 and the 66 had to do with whether she had a male or female.
Exactly. For
So-
33 days, if it was a male,
So it's not any like what I understand that you said was that the idea of a woman's cycle, like there's some things maybe spiritually different, like why did she have to be why 33 days for the male and 66 for the female?
it had to do again with the male. Hang on, let me find it. Hold on, because I had it here. My memory is not always good. That's why I write things down and then it goes out of my
I know
head.
you said
At the beginning, I had said that the boy on the 8th day would be circumcised,
right.
and that was the covenant of the shedding of blood. But for a woman, her shedding of blood would happen every single month. And that represents why she would need to remain for 66 days. To tell you the truth, Miriam, it's a complicated issue and I don't always understand it myself.
I think it's a mystery having to do with I don't know, on some level, the nature of men and women. I don't know.
I think so. You know, to understand the spiritual nature of the human being is a very difficult thing, and it's difficult to explain. But God was trying, in all these things, God was trying to take us away from pagan rituals. And we see that in everybody who is involved, deeply involved in a religion. And when they leave the rituals of the religion, sadly, most people leave God. They forget, they don't know how to come back to the simple relationship with the God of the Israelites, the God of the Hebrew people that are taking them away from religion, from paganism, and wanting us to just learn to trust him, to have a relationship with him. All these things that we're reading now, they don't have full application today because we don't have a Mishkan. We don't have the temple. So they're trying to build new rituals today so that we can so that they don't have, I don't even know how to
So
explain it.
I know what you, they
tired.
need to do what they think the temple did, but we don't have the temple, so they created their own ways of structure of going before God. But you know, the interesting thing is that almost sounds like a worshiping of the temple rather than the worshiping of the God.
That's
God only
what,
gave us the temple
yeah,
as you know, we were just a new nation, and God had appeared and given the 10 Commandments.
yes,
And we had the first day, the tent of meeting, and then the you know, well, God can't, remember he said God can't be contained. It was like God saying, okay, you need this, that's fine. But right now we don't have it, because the truth is, even in the early days, God does not dwell in the tent or in the temple. So we need to learn, instead of making all these things, let's just learn to have this incredible relationship that is possible. Could God,
right,
God is right with us.
yes. We need boundaries. But the boundaries were simple. God gave us simple boundaries. And those boundaries were the holidays that he gave us, the 6 holidays, the Shabbat. We know on one day we rest. We don't work. We're not slaves anymore. He gave us Pesach. He gave us Shavuot. He gave us the Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. He gave us those holidays. He gave us the 10 Commandments. And he says, these are all you need to do. If you do these things, you will live a healthy, happy, prosperous existence on planet Earth. My creation, everything that I made for you will prosper, will flourish, will give you a rich life. You won't be sick. You won't worry about getting pregnant. Everything will be wonderful. This is what he promised Adam and Eve.
Mm.
But they sinned.
That's why with the temple, they
Yeah.
didn't need a temple. They could speak.
Exactly. We love artifacts. Last week, Mauricio was speaking about that. The Ark of the Covenant probably can't be found because it would be worshipped. Just like
Yeah.
remember in this story where this plague broke out because we were being so disobedient in the desert, and Moses and the people were being bitten by snakes. And God told Moses to take the snake and put it up on the pole and have the people look up. And when they see the snake, when they look up, they'll be healed. So those who obeyed and looked up at the snake were healed. But then they started worshiping the snake, the serpent on the pole. And that's what God is trying to tell us. Don't worship the serpent on the pole. Don't worship the mezuzah or the Torah scroll or the artifacts. Don't worship the golden coverings of things. Don't worship a temple, or these are not things that God wants. He always wants us to direct us to Him, and for us to go into a quiet time where we can hear Him, listen to Him. If we listen to the still small voice within us, quiet our minds and quiet our hearts from the anxiety and the fears of everything that's going on around us, and He finds solutions for the things that we're afraid of, for the things that we don't need to be afraid of. And it's a lifetime process. We just need to learn to trust Him, not to hang on every word of all these things written in the Torah, but step back and see the bigger picture. So this is a tough portion, and I don't have all the answers, but I can step back and see the bottom line. That's the gift that God has given me. But if you ask me some of these words, like what they mean, and I don't always remember that, you can
No,
look
I
on your
just,
own.
I really didn't care so much what it meant, but the fact that what we translate now as leprosy and what we consider leprosy was not at all. You said they got it from a word. What they got it from the word sa'arat.
They got it from Tza'arat when it was translated into the Greek. They had to find something in Greek, and it sounds almost like, I have to listen to the message again. You'll hear it. I think it was this Shabbat. I'm not sure because I listened to a few of Rabbi's messages to be able to, write my notes. But the Greek word, I'd have to look it up, Miriam. I don't remember. But you can look that up. You're a
So,
good
but when
researcher.
God says that word in the Torah portion,
It sounded like leprosy.
but in the context where, like he would say, what is the, do you know, like what verses would say it? Like when they would say,
Go to Google. My
okay.
name isn't
Oh, okay. Now I
Google.
guess what I'm asking
I
you.
don't have that
No,
answer.
I don't. I'm not. It sounds like I'm asking for details. I'm not asking for the
You
details.
are.
No, I don't mean it that way. Like when you say, anyway, I'll have to. Okay, like when they had the hairs and the white hair versus this hair and that hair, those skin diseases, was that called sa'arat?
That was called Zara.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yes.
So they translated that thing, which is really a spiritual thing,
Yeah.
into leprosy. Okay.
Yeah. And among the Israelites. That's a good question, Miriam, because I don't know if if those things infected only the Israelites or other people as well, other cultures.
Mm.
I
I'm sure, but
that's
they
a
were,
very
we
good,
were,
but if it's a spiritual illness, that's a very good question.
well, but anyway.
A good thought.
I'm sure it was real literal things, because you can look at, if you look up certain skin diseases, there are certain things which have to do with the hair, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
God was using it in a spiritual sense, but the rest of the world had spiritual illnesses too. But at this point, he was taking out Israel to be a light to the world.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that they didn't have different bodies from the rest of the world.
No. And it's interesting because when I think about it, do you remember when I first broke out with shingles?
Yeah.
I mean, this was like at Sarat. I don't know if it came from me having Lashon Hara, but my stress level was so high at that time. And I remember when the doctor told me that I had it, and he said, you should go and learn meditation.
Uh,
So he understood
yeah,
that
more than, yeah.
there was an element of the stress that brought it out in me. And I said to him, I've already been through all that. But to me, the meditation was, I went to God and I said, I haven't been trusting you. Please forgive me. I had to find some things that would help me with the physical, to heal the physical aspects of instead of, I was too late to take the shot, but I found out that you could use lysine and watch a certain diet, take magnesium, take vitamin B12, take vitamin C, and within the week, it was gone. So when I get a physical illness, I immediately go to my emotions. I immediately ask God to help me find a solution. I remember when I lost my job, my last job before I came to work with our rabbi here as his assistant, many, many years ago. And I was working in the financial industry and I was making a lot of money. And then my boss got very sick and I lost my job. I didn't know a month. Yeah, right. As soon as I lost my job, as soon as I started to look for another job and I thought, oh, no problem. I'll find it easy. I'm a really good assistant. But then September 11th happened and the whole markets crashed and nobody was hiring. Everybody was losing their jobs. And for 9 months, I couldn't find work. I was looking like crazy and nothing was opening up. And my unemployment insurance was running out and I got scared. And I woke up one morning with a lower back pain. I couldn't move. For 3 days, I was like that. I just didn't know what to do. Couldn't get out of a chair. I was, dying. And then suddenly it hit me. I don't know why it took me so long. I lay down on the bed and I started praying and looked inside my body. I was looking within and saying, okay, what does the body represent? And I realized that the back, what does the back represent? Because my pain was in the back. The back supports the spine. The back supports the whole body, the nervous system, all supported in this back. And I said, I really stopped trusting that God would have my back, that God would support me. And the next day I woke up and the pain was gone. So I see how we really need to go to God for these things. We run immediately to the doctor. I know I have friends who run to the doctor for everything and they keep going and going and going. And the doctors say, I can't find anything. There's nothing wrong. It's spiritual. It's emotional. But people don't want to hear that because then you have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge what you're doing and make restitution for what you're doing and change something. And that's not easy for people to do. So anyway, I think that for me sums it up because that's the message of the Torah, the whole Torah. And it's a beautiful one. So I hope we got something out of this, even though I certainly don't have all the answers. I only have answers for myself. And even then, sometimes I don't. But when we have these things happen, go to him, go to God, open your heart to God and listen and see where you're being disobedient. Rabbi would always say Psalm 139, 34 and 35, something like that. Search me, O God, know my heart. Try me, test me, know my thoughts. See if there's any evil way within me and lead me into your way everlasting. And he does. And I have firsthand over and over. Yes, Baruch.
After you need to check if the Quebec money came in.
I will do that. Don't worry, I'll call you soon, okay?
Okay, 'cause,
I can see, Brian, you got a lot out of this session. You're laughing, eh? I know where I know you.
I heard everything.
You heard everything? It
Yeah.
was one thing to hear, there's another thing to listen.
Well,
the
about
way.
the eggs and the thing that Toby thinks we're Jewish because she has the eggs.
I know, here we go. Okay, Brian.
Go in the garbage.
Yes, okay. All right, everybody. I thank you for participating. Jerry, your reading is wonderful. Thank you for reading. I hope that God would open all our hearts, that he would hear our prayers, that he would heal our diseases, and let us not worry about these things we see around us, about the political situation of the world, about what's going on. God has it all in his hands, in control. I will call you, Brian, unless it has something to do with this Torah portion.
I got lucky on Monday in the band and the bingo, and I got lucky today in the banco.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Brian. I'm glad. All right. Take care. God bless
Thank
you.
you.